Hello, my name is Georgia Alian and I'm a specialist diabetes dietitian from the West Hampshire Community Diabetes Service. Today I'm going to be talking to you about how diet can help you with managing your diabetes. Around 85% of people living with type 2 diabetes are overweight, and carrying around those extra pounds can cause problems with our health, such as increasing our risk of heart disease and high blood pressure. Recent evidence also suggests that some people can put their diabetes into remission through weight loss, particularly if we can shift the visceral fat that acts like a rust around our vital organs, such as our pancreas and liver. There isn't a special diabetes diet, and there isn't one diet that suits us all. The best way to lose weight is to choose a way of eating that you can stick to over the longer term. Whether that is, for example, a Mediterranean diet, a low-carb diet, or a fasting style, it's important that you think about which is the best approach for you, and not just choosing a diet because it has worked well for someone else. Here is a pound of fat model for you to visualise what this looks like. And during the course of this video, I will be making some diet and lifestyle suggestions that will help you with your weight loss goals to shift those unwanted pounds. Today we focus on some evidence-based general healthy eating principles that underpin many of the popular diets that are out there. It doesn't have to be confusing, and this video aims to separate the facts from the fiction and clear up some of the myths out there. We will be using the Department of Health's Eat Well guide and adapting it for someone living with type 2 diabetes. There are 5 categories in total, and during this video I will focus on highlighting which foods contain carbohydrates, either the sugary or starchy kind, as these foods are the ones that have a direct impact on your blood glucose levels. If you're still struggling with your diet after watching this video, we recommend that you ask to be referred by your GP or practice nurse to see a specialist diabetes dietitian for more personalised advice on a one-to-one basis. So we're going to start here with section 1, which is our green section, otherwise referred to as our fruit and vegetable section. So why do we need to include these foods in our diet? These foods are an excellent source of vitamins, minerals, antioxidants and fibre. So including a good variety is key to making sure you reap all those important health benefits. Hopefully, most of you will have heard of the 5 a day message. It is important to highlight that this is a minimum target, so if you are hearing other messages in the media promoting 7 or 10 a day portions, it's because there is not an upper limit, particularly in relation to your salad and vegetable intake. A few questions I often get asked are, is it okay to eat grapes, or are bananas still allowed in my diet? The simple answer is yes, but in portion control. All fruits contain a natural sugar called fructose. So to reduce the impact of eating these foods on your blood glucose levels, it's better to have a sensible portion size and focus on spreading your intake out throughout the day. If you are trying to lose weight, it may also be sensible to limit yourself to only 2 to 3 portions of fruit per day, and instead try to focus on increasing your intake of vegetables and salad, as these foods don't contain any of those natural sugars. So, what is a portion? A cupped handful of fruit, for example, a handful of grapes or berries, or 2 small oranges, such as tangerines. This is the equivalent to around 80 grams in weight if you prefer using scales to measure for accuracy. Or a small to medium-sized banana is a sensible portion, but trying to choose one that is less ripe than this one, i.e. more green, as this reduces the sugar concentration. Fresh, frozen and tinned varieties all count towards your at least 5 a day target, but preferably aiming to choose tinned versions that are in their own natural juice. It is also true that more tropical fruits, such as mango and pineapple, naturally contain more sugars than more temperate fruits. So it's particularly important to stick to the recommended 80 gram portion size to prevent your blood glucose levels from spiking too soon after eating. It is, however, a smaller 30 gram portion, or about 2 tablespoons worth if having dried fruit, such as raisins, or for example, it would be 3 or 4 small dried apricots or prunes. The reason being is that dried fruit has a higher sugar concentration. Avocado and olives are the exception to the rule when it comes to fruits, as these both don't contain any natural sugars, but are instead a source of healthy fats, and a sensible portion would be no more than half an avocado a day. Things like fruit juice are worth a mention, as drinking these do cause your blood glucose levels to rise quickly, as they have had the all-important fibre removed, so it's preferable to eat whole fruit, or if opting for a smoothie, choose more vegetable-based ones, and limit to no more than 150ml portion for both. It's not always easy to buy shop-bought drinks in the recommended portion, so be careful, as the ones shown are between 250 and 330ml portions, which means you are just drinking excess sugar. Grapefruit deserves an individual mention, not because you have diabetes, but because it contains a compound that interacts with the absorption of certain medications, such as statins, which you may have been prescribed if you have high cholesterol. So for this reason, you are advised to avoid grapefruit if you take this type of cholesterol-lowering medication. But check with your pharmacist if you are unsure if this applies to your medication. When it comes to vegetables and salad, I introduce you to the portion plate, showing the recommended portions for weight loss. As you can see, it's recommended to fill your plate with half your plate of vegetables and salad. These foods help you keep feeling fuller for longer, as they are an excellent source of fibre. Vegetables that grow below the ground, i.e. root vegetables such as carrots, do contain small amounts of carbohydrates, but in minimal amounts, so there's no need to worry about the impact on your blood glucose levels. Section number 2 is our pink protein section, which includes foods such as beans, pulses, eggs, corn, meat and fish. These foods are important for growth and repair in the body and for building muscle. It is unlikely that your diet will be deficient in protein, and if you are following a vegan or a vegetarian diet, make sure you include lots of plant proteins. There are alternative vegan and vegetarian versions of the Eat Well guide, and for more details, please search online. The key take-home messages from this section are: limit the amount of red and processed meat, such as beef, bacon and sausages, to only a few times per week, and include sources of poultry like chicken or turkey. You don't need to eat meat every day, and the good news is that these foods don't affect your blood glucose levels unless they are covered in breadcrumb or batter, so try to limit these types. For weight loss, aim for a quarter of your plate to be a source of protein. E.g. for meat, this is the equivalent to the size of the palm of your hand. Protein foods help to keep you feeling fuller for longer than carbohydrate foods, so try to include a source at each meal time or snack opportunity if required. But remember, in portion control, e.g. a handful of nuts is a great nutritious snack. Try to include more sustainable plant-based food sources such as beans, which will be a 200-gram portion, or lentils. These foods are high in fibre, so won't affect your blood glucose levels as much. There are no limits on the number of eggs you can eat, unless you have a genetic condition causing high cholesterol levels. If you like fish, you should include 2 portions of sustainably sourced fish per week, and make sure 1 portion is an oily fish, such as salmon, mackerel or sardines. From a budget perspective, frozen and tin varieties all count. Oily fish contains omega-3 oil, which helps protect your heart. If you don't eat fish, then you could take an omega-3 supplement, but this doesn't give you the exact same benefits. Vegan alternatives are omega-3 rich seeds such as chia or flaxseed. section is our blue section called the dairy alternatives, which provide us with calcium. Good sources include milk, yogurts and fortified non-dairy alternatives. Cheese, things like dark green leafy vegetables, tinned fish bones, almonds and fortified breakfast cereals. Aim for 3 portions a day. In simplistic terms, that would be 200 ml of milk, a small pot of yogurt and around a 30 grams Matchbox portion of cheese. These 3 portions would meet the adult daily calcium requirements. We need to include calcium-rich sources daily into our diet for strong teeth, hair, nails and for building muscle. Milk and yogurts contain another natural sugar called lactose, so again, portion size is key to manage your blood glucose levels. If you are trying to watch your weight, sometimes choosing lower fat versions can be helpful. But be aware, for example, that some low-fat yogurts have had the fat replaced with added sugars. Overall, portion size is always key. The gold standard would be a small 125 to 150 gram pot of natural plain or Greek yogurt with a handful of fruit if you wanted to sweeten it naturally. Another option is to look at the ingredients list to choose one where fruit is listed higher up the ingredients list rather than added sugar. Be mindful that a Matchbox piece of full-fat cheddar cheese is around 100 calories. Softer varieties generally have less fat. For example, cottage cheese is at the other end of the spectrum and is very low fat. We refer you to look at the Carbs and Cows book, which we recommend as a great visual guide to different portion sizes and their nutrient content. The fourth section is our small purple section called oils and spreads. We all need some fat in our diet, but not too much of the saturated kind for our heart health. The healthiest oil for cooking is rapeseed oil, as it isn't broken down easily at high temperatures. And something like olive oil is perfect for cold dressings. Whatever your preference, try to use sparingly. A recommended portion is a teaspoon per person you are cooking for, rather than a large sort of glug, or there are spray options which can help you with calorie control. Other healthy fats include the oily fish, avocado, olives, nuts and seeds. Eating these foods won't have a direct impact on your blood glucose levels, but remember, for weight loss, even healthy foods need to be consumed in portion control. Spreads made from oils such as vegetable, olive or rapeseed contain healthier unsaturated fats. Butter, however, contains animal fat, which is higher in saturated fats. Eating too much saturated fat can increase cholesterol levels, so if this is your preference, use sparingly, but a little bit of butter in moderation isn't too harmful. Foods, however, that are made using lots of butter, such as pies, biscuits, pastry items, are often higher in calories, even if only eating small amounts. These foods can have more of a significant impact on your weight and your cholesterol levels. The final section is our yellow section, which are our starchy carbohydrate. This includes all types of bread, pasta, rice, oats, potatoes and cereals and anything else made of flour. In very simplistic terms, these foods are broken down by the body and turned into sugar for us to use as a source of energy. They aren't essential in our diet, but do provide us with a good source of fibre and B vitamins. Carbohydrate requirements vary depending on your gender, age, weight and physical activity levels, so there are not set amounts for individuals, and some people with diabetes choose to follow a lower carbohydrate diet and lifestyle to help them manage their diabetes and may turn to replacements such as cauliflower rice or spiralised courgette instead of spaghetti. A low-carb diet by definition is less than 130 grams for the total carbohydrates in a day. Where possible, choose high fibre and whole grain varieties of your carbohydrates to help keep your blood glucose levels steady, keep your bowels regular and keep you feeling fuller for longer. These are sometimes referred to as low glycemic index foods or low GI. Portion size is key, so just because something is low GI doesn't mean you can eat more of it. Pasta is best eaten al dente or firm to the bite for it to be considered low GI. A good starting point is to aim for a quarter of your plate as a carb source. For example, this would be a clenched fist for your jacket potato, or perhaps 3 or 4 small egg-sized new potatoes. Another top tip is to keep the skin on for extra fibre, and try not to have double carbohydrate portions at meals. For example, a lasagna with garlic bread or pie and mash, as these meals would make the total carbohydrate portion too large, and this will push your blood glucose levels up after eating. The good news is that we don't eat foods in isolation. So if you balance your meals as per the portion plate and you have sensible portions of carbohydrates alongside a source of protein and fibre at meal times, then any of the carbohydrate foods that you're eating will be broken down and turned into sugars more slowly, as your body works to digest everything together, and this is what we call a healthy, balanced diet. There isn't a special diabetes diet, and there isn't one diet that suits us all. The best way to lose weight is to choose a way of eating that you can stick to over the longer term. We recommend cutting out any sugary drinks and limiting your intake of fresh fruit juice to 150 ml a day, but only if needed. Be smart with snacks. You don't need to snack just because you have diabetes. If you are on insulin, it may be recommended to have a snack to treat a low blood sugar level, such as a hypo, if your levels are below 4. Healthy snack options could be to choose your yogurt or a handful of unsalted nuts, your fruit but in portion control, or even a boiled egg or some chopped up vegetables with some hummus, instead of turning to things like crisps, biscuits or chocolate. A good tip is to try and have some healthier options on standby if hunger arises. And don't bother with diabetic food, as there is no nutritional benefit and it's now against the law to use this labelling on products. When it comes to fluids, water is the best drink. You can flavour it yourself by adding some slices of fresh fruit. Tea and coffee count towards your fluid intake too, minus any added sugar and including a splash of milk. You can try herbal teas or no added sugar squash, and cordial is also okay if it's sugar-free. Remember, no more than 150 ml of fruit juice counts as one of your 5 a day. Salt is also worth a mention. Cutting down on your salt intake reduces your blood pressure. You should aim to have no more than 1 teaspoon, around 6 grams of salt per day. Over 70% of our intake comes from processed and convenience foods. So always check the label and choose lower salt options where possible. And when cooking, use herbs and spices as an alternative to salt. Our final message is a word on alcohol. Please drink alcohol sensibly. Guidelines recommend that men and women should not consume more than 14 units per week. ideally spread out across the 7 days. 1 unit is equal to half a pint of lager. A small 125ml glass of wine is 1.5 units, and a very small 25ml of gin or vodka or any spirit is also 1 unit. Alcohol also contains hidden calories, so it's not ideal if you were trying to lose weight. 1 large 250ml glass of wine is the equivalent to approximately 190 calories. A pint of beer can range from anywhere from 210 calories per pint to a sweet cider, which may be as much as 240 calories per pint. Whereas on the other hand, a single small gin and tonic with a slimline mixer would only be 56 calories. So to put this in perspective, 2 large glasses of wine and a single gin and tonic would be the equivalent of having a double cheeseburger from McDonald's. Finally, it's worth noting that beer contains carbohydrates. So it means drinking this will also cause your blood glucose levels to rise. Whereas spirits are carb-free and wine is very low carb. Thank you for listening today. That was our guide to healthy eating around diabetes. For more information, we signpost you to looking at the Enjoy Food booklet, which is available to download on the Diabetes UK website, where they have lots of useful resources online.